My area of expertise, I'm a certified trauma coach and trainer, and I often am called to talk about how does trauma hold women and children specifically in stuck places, whether that's with school districts or with faith-based communities, and also talking through the intersection between trauma and race, equity, and injustice.
Imagine having resources at your fingertips that support you through every step of your healing journey. That's exactly what you'll get with the You Are Not Your Trauma app. Access guided meditations that find your peace, read inspiring stories that resonate with your experiences, and join a community that truly understands. But that's not all. Dive into the Healing Chronicles and participate in community challenges. It's more than an app. It's a companion on your journey of self-discovery and healing. Download the You Are Not Your Trauma app today and join a community where your story matters and your healing journey is honored. Find us on the App Store and Google Play Store. Your journey to healing starts now.
Welcome to the You Are Not Your Trauma podcast, a show that reminds you that you are not alone, your experiences matter, and you are not defined by what you've been through. Each week, you will hear from the host and invited guests who have either personal or professional experience with trauma. They will share their stories and strategies for overcoming past wounds and beginning the journey toward healing and wholeness. Now, here's your host, a gifted speaker, author, coach, and entrepreneur, Harriet M. Harris.
Hello, and welcome to a brand new episode of You Are Not Your Trauma, the podcast that brings hope, healing, and inspiration to those who have experienced life's most challenging moments. I'm your host, Harriet M. Harris, and I am so glad that you're here today. I hope that this show is an important part of your healing journey. Now, there's a saying that says, it's not the storm of life that defines us, but how we dance in the rain. And today we'll discover how not to just dance, but to thrive amidst life's challenges, standing unshaken and unbroken. In today's episode, Unshaken, Unbroken, the bold journey to healing and fearless living, we'll dive into the transformational journey from trauma to triumphant living. We'll be unpacking the tools, mindsets, and practices essential for this transition, exploring how one can emerge stronger, more resilient, and truly live fearlessly. Joining us today is the remarkable Dr. Veirdre Jackson, an award-winning author, educator, and the CEO of Living Strong Consulting LLC. Now, she has a rich background spanning over 20 years. Dr. Jackson is a beacon for trauma-informed practices, DEIB, and organizational resilience. Her voice resonates on her internet radio show and podcast, Living Strong, the Flip Side of Adversity. And today, we're fortunate to have her share her wisdom right here with us. Dr. Jackson, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, Harriet, that was such a gracious and kind introduction. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about literally the thing I am grateful to be able to add value to the planet on.
Wonderful. Well, I'm excited just to learn more about what you have to share. So can you just kind of get started by telling us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
So I call myself the CEO and creative behind Living Strong Consulting. Although Living Strong does a multitude of things, our main focus is helping nonprofits learn how to build systems to be able to sustain their mission. Oftentimes, nonprofits will start something because they want to make a difference, but don't always know how to build the infrastructure to sustain the mission, the ministry, the vision. And so many members of my team have different skill set that support that process. My area of expertise, I'm a certified trauma coach and trainer. And I often am called to talk about how does trauma hold women and children specifically in stuck places, whether that's with school districts or with faith-based communities, and also talking through the intersection between trauma and race, equity, and injustice.
Wow. Wow. That is amazing. Absolutely amazing. And I've heard so many great things from there. I would say one of the things that that you said that stands out the most, and I guess it was probably from my own personal experience, is how you focus on how trauma holds women and children in stuck places. And I can definitely attest to the facts behind that definitely is something happening that happens because it happened to me, which led me to this podcast. So this is exciting. So I'm really excited about what you're going to share with us. So let's take a quick commercial break and we will be right back.
We are on an incredible journey together, sharing stories of resilience, hope, and the power of healing. To extend the reach and impact of the You Are Not Your Trauma movement, we've launched the Give 5 to Change Lives campaign. With just $5, you can contribute to developing invaluable resources like our upcoming You Are Not Your Trauma app, healing journal, and expanded podcast content. Every dollar and every share contributes to helping bring healing and hope to more people. We invite you to join this movement. Visit giving.youarenotyourtrauma.com to contribute. Together, we can change lives one heart at a time.
All right, and we are back. Now, Dr. Jackson, could you share a defining moment from your journey that truly embodies unshaken and unbroken?
Ooh. Now, you know what? It's difficult to sit here and say that I wasn't shaken. I will say there have been moments where I have absolutely been shaken to the point that I thought everything, the wheels and everything were going to fall off. But I can say that even in those moments, I remember a specific instance where I literally said to God, I've got nothing. You've taken everything. You've taken the dream, that what I thought was getting ready to be my path. I don't have a job. I don't have health insurance. I don't even have my health in this moment. I have nothing. And in my spirit, it just rose up. Okay, now I can work.
Wow.
And that was a turning moment. It was a turning moment to realize that it wasn't about my control. It was about my faith.
Wow. That's huge because as someone who feels like they're a fixer, like I can fix everything, like I was supposed to fix everything. I've been learning myself that I am not the fixer. I am not the one in control. And that's a huge moment. So thank you for sharing that. From your perspective, how does fearless living intertwine with healing from trauma?
Wow. So I often tell people, because sometimes they misunderstand my intention about the word fearless. I am not actually talking about a recklessness.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about understanding the power of belonging. Now, in many spaces, as you shared in my bio, one of the areas of expertise that I train on is diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. And as you dive into the research of how we as human beings have actually been wired for belonging, our brain is constantly searching for safety and connection all around us. And when we don't get it in healthy ways, we actually will still pursue it, but in crooked ways, whatever kind of survival habits, we're still looking for the same thing. So when I talk about fearless living, it's actually not about a recklessness, but remembering who you belong to. That's why my book is called Fearless Conversations with a Limitless God. It's remembering who you belong to.
Yes.
Therefore, I don't have to operate from a residence of fear.
Wow. And your book, just because you mentioned that, is a very good book. I personally enjoyed that book. So that is I can see how that works together for you, because it was very powerful and it was very life-changing to read and watch the videos that are with your book. So
Thank you.
what you're saying, what I'm hearing is kind of like, in fearless living, you're not saying, be reckless, don't just go and do anything, but it's more about doing it anyway. Like, I'm afraid to make this change, but I'm going to do it anyway. Like, knowing that God is kind of, if is behind you, he's supporting you. So even when you feel like you need to do something, but you're afraid to do it, that maybe you should just take that step and go anyway.
I think also because when we really, and I'm sure your listeners have heard the old saying that, your emotions don't have intelligence, right? Your
Yeah.
emotions are actually tied to your past patterns. And so your emotions are being driven by the patterns of what you have experienced before. So when you are encountering something new that you may not have a script for, but it's an opportunity to create a new neurological pathway, it may be an opportunity for you to explore a skill set that has actually been lying dormant. All of those things are new experiences. So in the book, we actually talk about that fear actually isn't your enemy. Fear is a natural stress response. The issue becomes when you make fear a residence, and that becomes a place that you live from. So it's recognizing that fear isn't our enemy. It actually is an opportunity to leverage action moving forward.
So having that courage to just keep do it anyway.
Yeah.
Love it.
And to recognize that I think sometimes we get caught up in being ashamed of the fact that we're afraid, or that emotion is there. Just don't let it drive.
Right. Don't let fear drive.
Don't let it drive.
Don't let fear drive. Don't get in the car. So how would you differentiate for our audience? How would you differentiate between merely moving past trauma and deeply healing from it?
Oh, so I have been having some very, at times, heavy conversations, but accountable conversations around listening instead of fixing. I think people oftentimes, especially those who are passionate about supporting others, as well as individuals who are stuck in either the past, or they're stuck or paralyzed about the future. It's really tied to how effective we are at listening for understanding.
Mm.
Oftentimes, we're trying to listen in order to fix, or we're really not listening at all. We really just want to move past this moment so we can get to what we actually want to talk about. That's even in prayer. So listening to understand with God, listening to understand what's happening inside of you, why or how you're responding to something, or listening with your whole heart to what someone else is saying, not for you to fix it, but for you to get clear about what's at the root of it. And oftentimes that really requires a patience that
Yes.
as human beings we struggle with. Therefore,
That
we
is
stay
true.
stuck.
Yeah. Yeah. Patience is something that I don't know why. It's something that it feels like it has to be like a learned thing. It's much as we know what it is, it just doesn't come as natural as you would think that it does. It should, because we're just always trying to get, like you mentioned before, we're trying to get to that next thing, the thing that we think that we're supposed to be at, even if that's not the direction we should be going in the first place.
But Harriet, can I add on to what you just said? Because
Absolutely.
our culture is one that is counterintuitive to patience, right?
Mm.
Our culture, it's actually frowned upon when you slow down.
Yes,
It's
that's true.
actually frowned upon if you're not moving fast enough. It's actually frowned upon if you're not the one grinding or hustling.
Yep.
And it's actually the power of being patient to listen more than rushing to fix that I have literally watched people break shackles and chains of things that you have to give time to process, not just rush through and get over.
That is true. Even when it comes to unpacking a house, because boy, I have been going through that myself. So this stands true in a lot of situations.
It does. And I just think about, and I open by saying I've been having some really hard conversations with people because the immediate response when I'm trying to actually teach them how to listen for understanding, because it is a skill, their response is, well, that's going to take too long.
Mm,
You can either pay it on the front end or the back end,
right,
because you rush to fix something and you're trying to fix a lie. And so you have to go back and do it over again anyway.
right. That's true. So, Dr. Jackson, can you tell me, in your experience, like, why do you think people, when dealing with trauma, right, instead of trying to heal from it, why do you think that people want to just move past it instead of the actual steps to heal?
We're afraid of pain. We're
Mm,
afraid of pain. We will avoid pain at any cost. And actually, it makes sense because our brain is designed to help us survive. So we're going to try and do whatever we can to avoid the tension in the pain. When actually, I've shared with teams, it's actually a John Maxwell object lesson that if you took a rubber band and you listed all the different ways you would use a rubber band, every single way you would list would require the rubber band to be stretched.
mm,
In every example, whenever I
right,
ask individuals to tell me all the ways you would use a rubber band, every single example involves in some way that rubber band being stretched. We as human beings do not want to be stretched.
mm,
But growth is found in the tension between where you are and where you want to be. And we're
wow,
afraid of that tension. And
Found in the tension.
it's found in the tension. And I'm not at all saying that you always have to be in that tension alone. Sometimes you're going to absolutely need someone to support,
Right.
but don't shy away from the pain. Don't shy away from the stretch.
That is great advice. And you're right. We are afraid of pain because it doesn't feel good. It does not feel good.
But any wound that has been in a place where it has gotten infected, cleaning it out is never going to feel good.
Right.
But if it will fester until it affects the entire body, the entire system, the entire relationship.
Yeah,
It,
that's true.
yeah.
And that also takes patience, just as you were just talking about. It takes that patience, that time we don't want to wait. So very good points. Very good points. I love the analogies here. So in your extensive experience, which practices or mindsets have been game changers in embracing fearless living?
Oh, so in my book, it's actually one of the tools. There are 9 in the book. One of the tools, the very last one, is joy, and recognizing that joy is about a state of being, and being able to tap into the gift that we have been given. I've been driving around all day today with this ongoing statement in preparation for a fearless conversation I'm going to be having with a group of women on September 23rd. And based on when people hear this, the concept that because he did, you can.
Mm.
And so because God gave us the spirit of power, love, sound mind, he has left us with peace, a comforter. He has left us with joy. It's leaning into, because he did, you can. And that awareness for me came through my journey of unpacking joy, even when the person who caused the pain in my life never said, I'm sorry.
Ooh.
Still had to get to a place of joy.
That's always a tough one.
Yeah.
That is, yeah.
It's real. It's real.
We were
held hostage by waiting for somebody else to say they're sorry. And it's never going to be about them. It's going to be about, who are you? Who are you as you belong to a limitless God that has already done everything necessary for your freedom? So because he did, you can.
Absolutely. Just that statement of you mentioned about unpacking joy and being able to do that despite, I struggled honestly with the whole, no one, that the person didn't apologize. And I do know how that can keep you in a place, but then you're just waiting and waiting for something that's never going to happen. Because what I realized is that it is heavy in your heart and mind, but they have moved on. They are somewhere completely different, and you are sitting there just hurt and broken and stuck, as you mentioned before, in this space because you're waiting for something that may or may not come. And I think one of the hardest things that I've ever had to do was learn to forgive someone who did not say, I'm sorry. I feel like even though it was a hard lesson, it was a very valuable lesson, and it helped me to be able to do that moving forward. Like it gets easier and easier because people are going to always do it.
Yes. They're always, because we're in a fallen world, right?
Right.
And we are flawed humans. And Harriet, if I can also, a part of that joy journey for me was recognizing that that person had their own pain story that they had not processed. And unfortunately, they were passing it on to other people in their relationship. And I happen to be one of them. And this may be really hard for people to hear, but I developed empathy for the fact that I got healed and that person still is in pain. And they actually might be on the outside, as I perceive it, they may be moving on, but internally, until they have dealt with the pain from their past that has caused them to transfer pain to other people, they're not free. They really aren't moving on.
Yeah.
So I've gotten to a place, actually, oftentimes as I coach others, even in uncomfortable conversations, I will say, do you realize that that person is probably acting out of their own story?
Yeah. And that is definitely something that I've learned even in this process of my own, is that, that people, the common phrase, hurt people. And as I see people hurting people, whether it's myself or someone else, I am now able to think through, like, okay, they may have, in some cases, they have, in some cases, you assume they have, but with the level of things that have been, done, or that they push out on other people, it's like, okay, what have they gone through, and it's a different way of looking at things, but it definitely is a reality, because we do live in a world where families, are passing down trauma through generations, through families, through, different things. And I think one of the things that I've truly learned in this time that I have been working, on my own journey, is that we've all experienced some level of trauma.
Right?
Yes.
Right. And honoring the fact that because trauma is so pervasive and it is so pricey to the lives, to the brain, to the relationships, it becomes something that I don't have to know what you've been through. Anyone that is acting out of any kind of hate, constant anger, narcissistic behavior, manipulation, those things are tied to something that most likely happened to them when they were a child and they were still vulnerable and they never got healed. And so I cannot stay wedded to their pain of their past, because it's too much that the God I belong to has for me to do.
That is true. That is so true. And I like the way you phrase that, that I can't stay connected to their pain. So, well, thank you. I appreciate that, that feedback, because that's huge. And it's just so accurate. So accurate. Because I think a lot of times we do, and then we have our own anger that's connected to that. And, and it becomes a cycle. I often tell people that I would go down a rabbit hole of, if this hadn't happened and that had happened, and, it's all connected. I connect everything back. And then I had to start letting go. And then as I'm even looking back at my own experiences, I'm like, oh, wow, my anger, my withdrawal, my, all these different behaviors. And so then as I see it happening around me, it makes me just kind of just a little bit more cautious. And like you said, even empathetic in some situations. And even in situations where I'm not necessarily empathetic, I'm like, I'm just not dealing with this. I'm just going to let this go, because one thing that I know is that we have to let God be God. And that has kind of become my mantra is God don't play about his kids. And, if someone is treating us bad or doing us wrong, let me let him deal with that, because he's the fixer and not me. So
100%, 100%.
So how can like a person discern if they're, on a genuine path of healing versus like potentially sidestepping their trauma?
Wow, that is an awesome question, because first of all, I love the way that you framed it, because first recognizing that healing is a journey, it's not a destination. So you're not get to a place, but it's recognizing when I begin to pause to listen for understanding what's happening, not just moving past the moment. So we talked about this a little bit a few moments ago.
Mm-hmm.
A journey of healing means that I become fearless because God has a track record of being the one who heals, who provides open doors, who provides opportunity. Will I submit myself to a process in the hands of a limitless God who absolutely can handle my anger, my pain, my frustration? I can be honest with, and there's no shame attached to it. The process of being willing to listen in order to understand, when I'm pausing to say, you know what? Why did that make me so angry? Instead of just saying, I'm not angry, you didn't affect me, and moving on.
Yes.
You know that you're healing when you are actually curious about your own process and what God might be doing in it and through you in the middle of it.
Like that.
Yeah.
You know that you're healing when you're curious about your own process.
Yes. Become a detective. Lean in. There's actually such a beautiful thing when we can sit in a place of using our superpower, which is metacognition. God in scripture tells us about taking command of our thoughts. Yes. Why does he tell us to do that? Because he's given us the skill, the superpower of metacognition. We can think about what we are thinking about, but you can't do that in the middle of a hustle.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, that hustle.
Can't do it in the middle of.
No, that hustle grind culture. I am so. I actually wrote a prayer earlier this year that I was like, Lord, please help me to trust you more than my hustle. But that's counterculture.
Yes, it is. and when you say that, I mean, so many thoughts come to mind, because there's a race, even when, in work, there's a race to get to the next level. There's a race to get, the next promotion, the next, just everything, there's this race, and I want to be better than the next person. And instead of us taking that time to really just go at the pace that works for us, the pace that's designed for us, because at the end of the day, it's going to happen when God wanted it to happen anyway. So
Can I share something personal with you?
Absolutely.
So 2023, at the end of 2022, I hired a financial analyst. I had a whole vision about a multi-state expansion for Living Strong. I had all of these specific goals that I had set. I was going to open a new office. I was going to do all of these new things. I was going to launch this global platform. I was going to speak. And I wanted the analyst to help me figure out the logistics of how and why. And so I went into 2023. We started building the plan. And in my spirit, and I love how God is, he is such an intimate and loving God.
Mm-hmm.
He told me in the quiet, and this is why I tell people, listen, have patience to listen for understanding.
Yes.
He told me in quiet time, it is not going to look like what you think it's going to look like.
Wow.
I heard it, dismissed it, and was like, 2023, this is, and I kept saying to myself, this is your breakout year. This is, and I kept working that plan with a financial analyst, and I put down the down payment for our new office. And it literally, I put down the down payment on a Tuesday, signed the lease on a Tuesday. Friday, the largest client Living Strong has had for 7 years restructured their business and decided they no longer wanted consultants, they only wanted employees, which would mean even if I said yes to the employee, it would be a third of what the current contract was. And I have not been anybody's employee in 7 years.
Right.
That was the first. And literally things all year, nothing has worked the way I thought it was going to work. But it has not looked like what I thought it was going to look like, but he has given me a peace about the fact that I'm still working.
Right.
Still have my hand on it. You're still going to get to the place I've promised you. It's just not going to look like what you thought it was going to look like. Do you trust me?
That is powerful. That is powerful. And as you were sharing that, it reminded me of how last year I had these moments, and I kept saying, I keep hearing this, you got to let something go. You got to let something go. I was doing, different businesses, and I was doing this, and I was like, what does this mean? And I was like, I was antsy about it. Like, okay, God, I got to figure this out so I can just get it done, and he took his time. He took his time. And I was like guessing, like, okay, it's this, it has to be that. And he took his time. And I was actually reflecting just a few days ago, like, you know what, God, you knew exactly what you were talking about. You knew exactly what you were going to do. And I just I could hear it in the quiet, but my brain would just start racing and I wouldn't be still long enough. So once I got to a point where I was starting to meditate, take that time to just sit in the quiet, that is when, even though he didn't make it bold and clear as the message, because that's what I wanted. I'm like, just talk to me, just give it to me audibly. Like I need it straight out. It just didn't come that way. So that is, I can completely relate to that. And just watching it and then finding peace with, okay, this is what you said. This is what you said you were going to do. You meant when you said I need to let something, because I was wearing myself down. And that's not what he wanted. That hustle that you were talking about, I was wearing myself down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. The awareness of, are we actually believing him at his word? And as I've gotten to a place of realizing what's for me is for me, I'm not going to have to hustle for it. I'm not going to have to beg for it. I'm not going to have to push anybody over for it. What's for me is for me. And if I am generous with others, it continues to open the doorway even wider for my opportunities.
Yes.
And the one of the hustle things for my radio show, I've never taken any time off. And my team really encouraged me to take the whole summer off. And I say, oh, that's unheard of. Like, we need live shows. We got ratings to follow. And he said, it's not going to look like what you think it's going to look like. I took the whole summer off, and he showed me, he said, this is not about your hustle. I gave you this show. There has not been a single drop. It actually has elevated. We have had an escalation of reach and ratings the entire summer. And so,
God.
Right. And I just tell people it's not going to look like what you think it's going to look like. Trust him.
That is the most important part. Yes, it is. Now, another question, and this is my last question for you for this episode. For those that are starting their healing journey and they're feeling a tad bit overwhelmed, what guidance can you provide?
Don't do it alone. Guys, find someone who will be your accountability partner in processing. And I know I'm going to sound like a broken record, but it's the last question. So I'll just say it one last time. Identify someone who will listen with their entire heart. Not listen with the intent or the expectation that they think they're listening to fix you or your problems. Just tell them, I need you to listen for understanding. Listen for the patterns that I might not even realize I'm doing or saying because I'm so stuck in it. I need you to listen for the gaps in my behavior, in my habits they're no longer serving me, but again, they're in my blind spot. So you are looking for someone who will listen with their whole heart because they want you to feel seen, remind you of who you belong to, and then help you understand what this journey, the possibilities of this journey could be for you as you're healing.
That's beautiful. And I love that. Listening, not to fix, but listening for understanding, for patterns. And that's powerful because a lot of times you're right, when we are stuck in it, we don't see what someone else can see on the outside. And then listening for gaps. So thank you for this advice for our listeners. I know that this will be helpful for someone. I can see the benefit in it myself. So thank you. Now, Dr. Jackson, we're going to take a really quick commercial break and we will be back to wrap up this episode.
You have every right to be successful. You have every right to be happy. You have every right to live the life you dream of. But your negative thoughts are holding you back from achieving those things, and it's time to stop listening to them. Sound familiar? If so, then this book is for you. Stop Stopping Your Success: A guided journal to break free from the negative thoughts holding you back from your dreams is available now on Amazon and BarnesandNoble.com. Or get an author autographed copy at www.stopstoppingyoursuccess.com.
Okay, we are back. Thank you so much, Dr. Jackson, for joining us and sharing your invaluable insights. Your wisdom and experiences are a beacon of hope for many people. And I am truly, truly honored to have had you to share it with us. Do you have any final words to share with our listeners today?
First of all, I want to thank you just in return for allowing me to have this space and time with your listeners. I think in closing, reminding your listeners that fear is a perspective. It is not your enemy. That what you believe is going to control your behavior, and recognize that fearlessness is not recklessness. It's remembering who you belong to. And when you recognize that it's not about looking around you, but it's remembering to look up, to be patient, and to listen, because you already belong. You don't have to grind or hustle for anybody or anything.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I know that your words are something that our listeners can truly benefit from. To all of our listeners out there, thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode of You Are Not Your Trauma podcast. And as we wrap up this episode, let's carry this thought forward. Our resilience isn't determined by the absences of cracks or scars, but our ability to remain unshaken and unbroken in the face of them. Continue to heal, continue to live fearlessly, and remember that you are so much more than your trauma. Now, if you found today's episode helpful, please don't forget to share it with someone who can benefit from the information that was shared. Also, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review the show. You can check out the website at www.youarenotyourtrauma.com to leave feedback, request to be a guest on the show, subscribe to the show, get information on our show guests, or to get information about advertising on You Are Not Your Trauma podcast. You can connect with You Are Not Your Trauma podcast on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at You Are Not Your Trauma podcast. And if you have a story to share, please email me at contact@harrietmharris.com. And until next time, please remember, you are not your trauma.